John Maxwell stood at the viewing window of Proxima Station, watching the Accelerian ships arrive. They moved with perfect precision, their sleek purple hulls gleaming against the darkness of space. 20 years of peace, he thought. 20 years of walking on eggshells. "They're early," said Olivia Wright, appearing at his side. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, and she carried her datapad like a shield. "That's unusual for them." "They want to make a point," John replied. "Show us they control the schedule." Olivia nodded. As Earth's top intelligence officer assigned to diplomatic services, she missed nothing. "The meeting starts in 1 hour. President Kelly sent new instructions this morning." John turned away from the window. At 53, he had spent half his adult life dealing with the Accelerians. His once brown hair had gone mostly gray, and lines had formed around his eyes from years of diplomatic smiling. "Let me guess. Be polite. Don't make them angry. Accept whatever they want." "Not this time," Olivia said, her voice dropping. "We have evidence of Solarian ships near New Montana. The president says we need to push back." John felt a chill. His sister Diane lived on New Montana with her family. The colony was supposed to be well outside the buffer zone, established by the peace treaty. "About time," said Nathan Carter, joining them. The military liaison was younger than both of them, his uniform perfectly pressed. "We can't keep giving ground forever." John nodded slowly. 25 years ago, they nearly wiped us out in first contact. We've been recovering ever since. The three of them walked through the station toward the main conference room. Proxima Station served as neutral ground for diplomatic meetings, jointly maintained by humans and 3 other species. The hallways bustled with various aliens, tall, willowy Alderans, the crab-like Misorians, and the occasional floating Dralid. High Executor Zarek is leading their delegation today, Olivia said, checking her datapad. "That's unusual too. He normally only appears for major treaty negotiations." John frowned. "They're planning something big." The conference room doors slid open to reveal the Solarian delegation already seated, 6 of them, with High Executor Zarek in the center. Solarians resembled tall, thin humans with pale blue skin and completely black eyes. They wore elaborate robes with metal components that seemed both decorative and functional. "Ambassador Maxwell," Zarek said, his translator converting the clicking Solarian language to English. "You have kept us waiting." The meeting wasn't scheduled to begin for another 40 minutes. "Executor," John replied calmly, taking his seat across from Zarek. "But we're happy to start early." "Time is precious," Zarek said. "We have come to discuss human expansion. You have placed settlers in systems beyond your approved zones." Nathan leaned forward. "Those systems were uninhabited and unclaimed. The treaty doesn't forbid." Zarek raised a 6-fingered hand, cutting him off. "All systems within 50 light-years of Solarian space require approval for settlement. This is not negotiable." John maintained his diplomatic smile. "The systems in question are over 60 light-years from your nearest outpost, Executor." "Our borders have expanded," Zarek said simply. The humans exchanged glances. This was new. "We weren't informed of any territorial expansions," John said. "We are informing you now," Zarek replied. "The settlements at New Montana, Harris IV, and Gliese 581 grams must be evacuated within 30 Earth days." John felt his heart beat faster. That's over 500,000 people. It would take years to relocate them safely. 30 days, Zarek repeated. "The Empire has been patient with human expansion. That patience has limits." After 3 tense hours, the meeting ended with no resolution. As the Solarians filed out, Zarek paused beside John. "Your species is young," he said quietly. "Youth often mistakes itself for immortality." Back in their private quarters, John, Olivia, and Nathan gathered to prepare their report to Earth. "This isn't just about territory," Olivia said. "Something's happening. My sources say the Xelarians have been moving military assets to forward positions for months. We need to warn the colonies, Nathan added. John stared at the star map showing human settlements. Red dots marked the colonies the Xelarians wanted evacuated. His sister's home, New Montana, blinked in the center. We're going back to Earth, he decided. Now, we need to speak to the president directly. 3 days after returning to Earth, John Maxwell paced the floor of his office in Geneva. The morning sun streamed through the windows, but it did nothing to warm the chill he felt inside. Olivia had sent an urgent message requesting his presence immediately. When she arrived, her face told him everything before she spoke a word. "They're moving," she said, placing her datapad on his desk. A Xelarian battle fleet just jumped into the New Montana system. No warning, no communication. John felt his stomach drop. Have they made contact with the colony? They're not responding to any transmissions from our people. I've accessed the emergency feeds from the colony. Olivia's voice was tight, controlled. The president is waiting for you in the situation room. 20 minutes later, John sat beside President Susan Kelly as they watched real-time footage from New Montana. The large screen showed orbital views of the human settlement, farms, small cities, the spaceport. Then 6 Xelarian warships appeared at the edge of the frame. "Get me Zarek," John demanded to the communications officer. "Get me anyone in the Xelarian diplomatic corps." "We've been trying, sir," the young woman replied. "All we get are automated responses stating that a security operation is in progress." On screen, the first Xelarian energy beams struck the colony. Buildings vaporized instantly. The spaceport, where evacuation ships were frantically launching, erupted in flames. 300,000 people, President Kelly whispered. Her face had gone pale. "John, your sister, is down there," he finished, his voice hollow. He watched as another blast obliterated the residential district where Diane and her family lived. The feeds began to cut out one by one as the colony's communication systems were destroyed. "Sir," called another officer, "we're picking up similar attacks at Harris IV and the research outpost on Gliese 581 grams. John turned to President Kelly. "They never intended to let those people evacuate. This was planned long before our meeting." The last functioning camera on New Montana showed civilian transport ships attempting to flee. The Xelarian vessels methodically targeted each one, destroying them with single, precise shots. "No survivors. No mercy. They're sending us a message," Olivia said quietly. The room fell silent as the final feed went dark. President Kelly stood up, her hands shaking slightly. "I need options, people," she said. "General Porter, what's our military readiness?" The general cleared his throat. "Madam President, we can scramble the fleet, but the Xelarians outgun us at least 5-1. Their technology is decades ahead of ours. We could offer concessions," suggested the Secretary of State. "Pull back all colonies within 100 light-years of their territory. Show them we're not a threat." John stared at the now blank screen, seeing his sister's face in his mind. Diane, who had always believed in building a new world. Her children, who would never grow up. "No," he said, his voice cutting through the room. "Concessions won't stop this." President Kelly looked at him. "What are you suggesting, John?" "The Xelarians have been preparing for this for years," he replied. "Every negotiation, every treaty. They were just buying time, assessing our weaknesses. They don't want concessions. They want submission. So what do we do?" she asked. John looked around the room at the shocked, frightened faces of Earth's leadership. 25 years ago, humans had barely survived first contact with the Xelarians. The peace treaty had been signed out of desperation, not strength. "We fight," he said simply, "not just to defend what's left, but to win. They've shown us what they are today. They won't stop with these colonies." Olivia's datapad chimed. She looked down, then back up, her expression grim. "The Xelarian Empire has just issued a statement to the Galactic Council," she reported. They claim they've conducted limited operations against human terrorist cells threatening their security. They're asking other species to condemn human aggression. They killed 300,000 civilians and called them terrorists, John said, his voice quiet but filled with resolve. We need to call an emergency Security Council meeting. Now. As they left the Situation Room, John felt something change inside him. The diplomat who had spent decades seeking peace was gone. In his place stood a man who now understood the true nature of the enemy humanity faced. The Security Council chamber was packed. Representatives from all 27 human colonies filled the seats, their faces grim. Large screens displayed the faces of those who couldn't travel to Earth in time. The attack had happened just 18 hours ago, but the news had spread like wildfire across human space. John Maxwell stood at the center of the room, waiting. Behind him sat President Kelly, flanked by military and civilian advisors. The room hummed with angry whispers and occasional sobs. Many had lost family or friends in the attacks. The emergency session of the United Earth Security Council is now in session, announced the council speaker. Ambassador Maxwell has the floor. John stepped forward. He hadn't slept since watching New Montana burn. Yesterday, the Xilarian Empire destroyed 3 human colonies without warning, he began. His voice was steadied despite his exhaustion. New Montana, Harris IV, and the Gliese Research Station. Over 300,000 civilians dead. Not a single military target among them. He tapped his pad, and images appeared on the main screen. Xilarian ships firing on civilian transports, buildings collapsing, the final moments of a colony that had existed for 15 years. We have evidence the Xilarians have been planning this attack for at least 3 years, John continued. They used peace talks to gather intelligence while positioning their forces. General Joseph Harris stood up from the military section. Ambassador Maxwell, with respect, we need to face facts. The Xilarians outmatch us technologically by at least 40 years. Their fleet is 5 times our size. In conventional warfare, we cannot win. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. The general is right, said the representative from Alpha Centauri, an older woman with silver hair. We should negotiate. Offer to withdraw from disputed territories. Show them we're not a threat. They don't see us as a threat, John replied. They see us as property, as resources to be managed. The representative from Europa Colony, a tall man named Paul Weber, stood up. Then what do you suggest? Surrender immediately to save more lives. John looked around the room. These were the leaders of humanity, frightened and facing extinction. He understood their fear. He shared it. No, he said firmly. I suggest we fight. The room erupted in voices. Some shouted support, others objected loudly. Fight a war we cannot win, General Harris asked incredulously. We cannot win a conventional war, John agreed, so we don't fight conventionally. He pressed his pad again. The screens changed to show military projections, intelligence reports, and technical specifications. For 5 years, a small group of us have been preparing for this possibility. A contingency plan called Protocol Omega. We knew this day might come. Olivia Wright stepped forward, taking her place beside John. We have assets in place throughout Xilarian space. We have technologies they don't know about. And most importantly, we have allies they don't know about. Nathan Carter joined them. The Xilarians think they understand human warfare because they've studied our history, but they've never actually fought us. Not really. President Kelly stood up. This is not a decision I can make alone. This body must vote. Do we appease the Xilarians and hope for mercy? Or do we fight, knowing the cost will be enormous? John looked at the faces around him. He thought of Diane and her children, of the feeds going dark as Xilarian weapons erased human lives. Before you vote, he said quietly, let me tell you what happens if we surrender. He spoke for 10 uninterrupted minutes. He outlined the Xilarian history of conquest, their treatment of subjugated species, the slow cultural erasure, the generations of servitude. We fight not because we are certain of victory, he concluded. We fight because the alternative is to accept a future where humanity survives on its knees, where our children know nothing but submission. That is no survival at all. The room fell silent. Even those who had argued the loudest for appeasement sat in stunned quiet. I call for the vote, President Kelly said. One by one, the representatives voted. Colony after colony, Earth nations, outposts, mining stations. When the final vote was tallied, the decision was made. Humanity would fight. Ambassador Maxwell, said President Kelly, you are hereby appointed war diplomat with extraordinary powers. May God help us all. Deep beneath the streets of Geneva, John Maxwell stood in the newly established war headquarters. The bunker had been built decades ago during Earth's last global conflict, now repurposed for humanity's greatest challenge. Screens covered the walls, showing military movements, communication channels, and data feeds from across human space. Protocol Omega is now active, John announced to the team gathered around him. Olivia, begin Phase 1. Olivia Wright nodded and moved to her station. Her fingers flew across the interface as she activated a network that had been dormant for years. Sending activation codes now, she said. Assets across Solarian space will begin reporting within 12 hours. Nathan Carter studied the military displays. The Solarians have moved 3 battle groups to the edge of our territory. They're expecting us to either surrender or launch a desperate attack. Then let's surprise them, John replied. We don't hit their ships first. We hit their story. He turned to a communications specialist. Is the package ready? Yes, sir, the young man replied. We can broadcast to every species in the Galactic Council network whenever you give the word. John took a deep breath. Do it now. Across thousands of worlds, on every communications channel used by spacefaring species, the broadcast began. It showed the unedited footage of the attack on New Montana, the destruction of Harris Ivy, the methodical elimination of escape pods filled with children. The broadcast continued with historical evidence of Solarian conquests disguised as protective interventions, treaties violated, species subjugated, cultural treasures destroyed. The Solarians claimed to be peacekeepers. John's voice narrated over the footage. This is their peace. In the war room, reports began flooding in. The Alderan ambassador requesting an immediate meeting. The Masorian collective withdrawing their trade representatives from Solarian space. The Drellid suspending Solarian access to their transportation networks. It's working, Olivia said, looking up from her station. My contacts on the Galactic Council say the Solarians are demanding the broadcast be stopped. 3 species have already issued statements condemning the attacks. John nodded. The Solarians have controlled the narrative for centuries. They never expected us to fight an information war first. A priority alert flashed on the main screen. Nathan moved quickly to check it. The Alderans are offering technical assistance, he said, surprise evident in his voice. Not military aid, but they're willing to share defensive shield technology that's decades ahead of ours. Accept immediately, John ordered, and prepare diplomatic packages for every species that's responded positively. We need allies, not just sympathizers. Another alert sounded, this one with a red warning symbol. Olivia's expression grew grim as she reviewed the incoming data. The Solarians have dispatched their main battle fleet, she reported. They're heading directly for Earth. Estimated arrival in 6 days. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Solarians were not coming to negotiate or intimidate. They were coming to end humanity. John walked to the center of the room, where a holographic display showed the approaching fleet, over 200 vessels, many larger than anything humans had ever built. They think this will make us surrender, he said quietly. They think we'll break at the sight of their full might. We have 6 days to prepare, Nathan said. Every ship we can muster, every weapon we can deploy, and every ally we can find. added Olivia. John studied the display, calculating options, weighing chances. I want our experimental weapons moved into position, the ones the military said were too dangerous to test, and get me a direct line to the Alderaan High Council. A communications officer approached him hesitantly. Sir, there's a message from the Xilarian High Executor. He's demanding to speak with you personally. John turned to face the officer. Put him through. Let's hear what he has to say. The largest screen flickered, then showed the face of High Executor Zarek. His black eyes seemed to burn with cold fury. Maxwell, he said, his translator making his voice sound flat and mechanical. You have made a grave error. The Empire offered you a place in the New Order. Now you will have none. John stared back at the alien who had ordered the death of his sister and countless others. His voice, when he replied, was calm and clear. No, Zarek, you made the error. You showed us what you truly are. And now we're going to show you what humans are. 6 days passed in a blur of activity. Earth transformed into a fortress as every available ship moved into defensive positions. Civilian vessels were fitted with hastily manufactured weapons. Experimental defense platforms were towed into orbit. Volunteers flooded military recruitment centers across every human colony. John Maxwell hadn't slept more than 3 hours at a stretch. He stood now in the war room, watching as the Xilarian fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. 217 vessels, Nathan reported. Their main battle group is in arrow formation, designed for maximum forward firepower. How many ships do we have? John asked, though he already knew the answer. 84 military vessels, 112 armed civilian ships, Nathan replied, plus the 36 defense platforms. The Alderaan shields have been installed on our largest ships, but they haven't been properly tested. Olivia joined them at the display. My agents report the Xilarians expect this to be over in hours. They're already preparing announcements of Earth's surrender. John nodded slowly. They think they know human warfare from studying our past conflicts, but they've never experienced human desperation. He turned to the communications officer. Send the message to all our ships. Operation Firebreak is a go. As the Xilarian fleet approached Mars orbit, the human defenders remained in position around Earth. The Xilarian formation was perfect, a spearhead of destruction aimed at humanity's homeworld. They're in position, Nathan said, weapon systems powering up. John took a deep breath. Now, across the solar system, hidden human ships activated. Not around Earth, but near Jupiter and Saturn. Small, fast vessels that had been concealed for days. They raced toward the rear of the Xilarian formation. What is this? Demanded the Xilarian commander over an open channel. Suicide attacks. The human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they released thousands of tiny objects, each no bigger than a coffee cup. Swarm drones active, Nathan reported. Target acquisition in progress. The tiny drones attached themselves to Xilarian ships by the hundreds. They bypassed shields, finding seams and maintenance hatches. Then they began to drill. On screen, John watched as confusion spread through the Xilarian fleet. Ships began firing randomly, trying to destroy the tiny attackers. Some Xilarian vessels hit their own allies in the panic. Phase 2, John ordered. The main human fleet moved forward, firing concentrated energy beams at specific points on the largest Xilarian vessels, points that Olivia's spies had identified as weaknesses. Sir, Nathan's team is in position, a lieutenant reported. During the chaos, a small stealth ship had approached the Xilarian command vessel. Nathan led a team of Special Forces soldiers wearing experimental suits that masked their life signs. Boarding successful, came Nathan's voice over the secure channel. Moving to the command center. The battle raged for hours. Human ships fought with desperate intensity. When their weapons failed, they rammed Xilarian vessels. When their engines died, they drifted into enemy firing lines, absorbing shots meant for operational ships. On Earth, Cities burned as some Solarian weapons broke through. Millions sheltered underground, listening to the sounds of destruction above. Nathan's team has the command codes, Olivia announced suddenly. Transmitting now. John immediately sent the codes to every human ship. Target their communication systems first, then propulsion. The tide began to turn. Human ships, now able to predict Solarian maneuvers using the stolen tactical data, fought with increasing effectiveness. The swarm drones had disabled dozens of enemy vessels. The Alderaan shields proved more resilient than expected. After 18 hours of continuous battle, the unthinkable happened. The remaining Solarian ships began to retreat. "They're pulling back," Nathan reported, his voice exhausted but triumphant as he returned to the war room. "Their formation is broken. They've lost nearly a third of their fleet." John stared at the display, hardly believing what he was seeing. Humanity had just handed the Solarian Empire its first major military defeat in centuries. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "But today, we showed them something they never expected to see." "What's that?" asked Olivia. "A species that won't go quietly," John replied. "And now we need to push our advantage before they recover. Get me a direct line to the Alderaan High Council. It's time to formalize our alliance." 2 weeks after the Battle of Earth, John Maxwell stood on the neutral world of Ta City IV. The planet's blue-green vegetation swayed in the gentle breeze as delegates from 17 spacefaring civilizations gathered in the ancient meeting grounds. "They're all here," Olivia said quietly, standing beside John. "Even the Vega Collective. They haven't left their home systems in 50 years. John nodded. Fear is a powerful motivator. The Solarians have made many enemies, but no one dared to stand against them. Until now. The meeting hall was a marvel of alien architecture, with soaring crystal arches that caught the light of Ta City's sun. Representatives from across the galaxy took their seats at the circular table. Some looked like humans, others were utterly alien. Crystalline beings, floating gas clouds contained in special suits, multi-limbed creatures with eyes on stalks. The Alderaan representative, a tall being with silvery skin, called the meeting to order. "We gather today to discuss the Solarian threat," the Alderaan said, its voice melodic and clear. "For the first time in living memory, the Empire has suffered a major defeat. This presents an opportunity none of us expected to see." All eyes turned to John as he stepped forward. The human victory had sent shockwaves through galactic society. Species that had lived in fear of the Solarians for centuries now looked to humanity with new interest. "My name is John Maxwell," he began. 3 weeks ago, the Solarian Empire destroyed 3 human colonies without warning. They murdered 300,000 civilians to send a message. They expected us to surrender. Instead, we fought back. John activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed historical records, treaty violations, and evidence that Olivia's network had gathered over years. "The Solarians call themselves protectors of galactic peace," John continued. "But their true history tells a different story. For over 600 years, they have systematically conquered and subjugated species across this sector of the galaxy." The display showed world after world that had fallen to Solarian protective interventions. The delegates murmured as they recognized the pattern. "The Drellid lost their outer colonies 50 years ago," said the Drellid representative, a floating orb of purple light. "The Solarians claimed they were defending against pirates. We were forced to accept their military bases on our remaining worlds. The Masorian trade routes were restricted after a security incident that we never saw evidence of," added the Masorian delegate, clicking its claw-like appendages in anger. One by one, representatives shared similar stories. The pieces fit together into a clear pattern of expansion and control. "The Solarians believe in their superiority," John said. "They see other species as either threats to eliminate or resources to control. Humanity is just their latest target, but we won't be their last." The Vega Collective representative, A crystalline being that sparkled with internal light spoke in a chiming voice. "What do you propose, human? The Empire still possesses the largest fleet in known space, despite your victory." John looked around the table. "I propose an alliance, not just for mutual defense, but to end the Xelarian threat permanently. Together, we have the numbers, the resources, and now the resolve to challenge them." The room grew quiet as the delegates considered his words. "Such an alliance has never existed," said the Alderaan. "Many of our species have histories of conflict with each other." "Then we make history today," John replied. "The Xelarians maintain their power by keeping us divided. United, we can match their strength." The delegates began to talk among themselves. John waited patiently. He knew that centuries of fear could not be overcome in a single meeting. Then a message flashed on Olivia's pad. Her face paled as she read it. "3 Xelarian assassins just tried to breach the perimeter," she whispered to John. "Security stopped them, but they were carrying antimatter charges. They were going to eliminate everyone in this room." John's eyes widened. Then he saw an opportunity. "Delegates," he called out, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Xelarian assassins just attempted to kill everyone in this hall. They fear this meeting that much." The room erupted in shocked voices. Fear turned quickly to anger. "I call for a vote," said the Dralid representative, "on the formation of the Alliance of Free Worlds, with humanity as its coordinator." One by one, the delegates voted. By day's end, the alliance was born. 1 year passed. The war spread across dozens of star systems as the newly formed alliance pushed back against Xelarian control. John Maxwell no longer looked like a diplomat. His face had hardened, and a scar ran along his left cheek from a close call during an attack on the Alliance headquarters 3 months earlier. "Operation Reciprocity begins in 6 hours," he announced to the gathered commanders in the war room. The Alliance fleet had grown to include ships from 12 different species, each bringing unique technologies and tactics. Nathan, now an admiral, pointed to the holographic display showing the Xelarian fortress world of Deltas Prime. "My ground forces will strike here, at the main defense grid control center. Once the shields are down, the combined fleet can target their military installations." Olivia, who had built the largest intelligence network in the galaxy, pulled up a different display. "My agents have activated the Calaxian resistance cells within the Empire. They'll begin their uprising exactly 2 hours before our attack, drawing Xelarian forces away from the primary targets." John nodded. "The Xelarians never expected us to last this long. They certainly didn't expect us to take the fight to them." The Alliance had won a string of victories over the past year. Each success brought new allies, new technologies, and new hope. The Xelarian Empire, for the first time in centuries, found itself fighting on multiple fronts. "The Galactic Council has called an emergency session," Olivia added. "High Executor Zarek will be there in person. He's going to try to turn neutral species against us." John's eyes narrowed at the mention of Zarek's name. "Then I'll be there too." It's time the Council heard the full truth. Hours later, Operation Reciprocity launched across Xelarian space. Allied ships struck military bases with surgical precision. Nathan led the assault on Deltas Prime, his forces using stealth technology developed by the Mizorians to bypass outer defenses. Meanwhile, John stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber was filled with representatives from over 100 spacefaring civilizations. Many had remained neutral in the conflict, unwilling to risk Xelarian retaliation. High Executor Zarek spoke first, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "The human-led rebellion threatens the peace we have maintained for centuries. They attack civilian targets. They incite violence among peaceful populations. They must be stopped before more innocent lives are lost." John waited for his turn, watching Zarek carefully. When he finally stepped forward to address the council, he carried a small device in his hand. "The Xelarian Empire speaks of peace while practicing genocide," John said. "They call us rebels while they enslave entire species. Today, I bring not just accusations, but proof." He activated the device. Above the council chamber, a massive holographic display appeared. It showed Silurian commanders ordering the destruction of escape pods from New Montana. It showed official documents authorizing population management on conquered worlds. It showed Zarek himself approving plans for biological weapons to be used against resistant populations. This evidence comes from the Silurians' own records, John continued, obtained from their command centers, their secure archives, their private communications. This is not propaganda. This is the truth they have hidden for centuries. The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. Zarek's face contorted with rage. Lies, he shouted. Human deception. Every file is authenticated. John replied calmly. Your empire has built its power on the suffering of others, and now those others have found their voice. As John spoke, reports flooded in from across Silurian space. The Calaxian uprising had spread to 6 worlds. Nathan's forces had captured the defense grid on Deltas Prime. Alliance ships were striking deep into Silurian territory. Zarek received the news through his personal communication device. His black eyes widened in shock. This council must act, John urged. The Silurian Empire has violated every principle of galactic law. They must be held accountable. The head of the council, an ancient being from a species known for their absolute neutrality, spoke slowly. These accusations are grave. This evidence is disturbing. The council will deliberate on sanctions against the Silurian Empire. It was unprecedented. In all of galactic history, a founding species had never faced censure from the council. As the session ended, Zarek approached John, his voice low and threatening. You have no idea what you've unleashed, human. The Empire still has weapons you cannot imagine. John met his gaze without flinching. Then use them. Show the galaxy what you truly are. The Silurian Empire began to fracture from within. After the Galactic Council imposed sanctions, many subject species rose up against their oppressors. Civil war erupted across Silurian space as moderate factions fought against hardliners who refused to surrender. John Maxwell stood at the observation window of the Alliance flagship, watching as the combined fleet moved toward the Silurian homeworld. 5 years had passed since the destruction of New Montana. 5 years of brutal war that had redrawn the map of known space. The Silurian Defense Force has split, Nathan reported, joining John at the window. The moderate faction is offering to surrender. The hardliners have retreated to the homeworld. And Zarek? John asked. Still leading the hardliners, Olivia answered as she entered the room. He's calling for a fight to the last Silurian, but his support is crumbling. Most of their colonies have already accepted Alliance control. John nodded slowly. The victory they had fought so hard for was finally within reach, but he took no joy in it. Too many had died on all sides. The moderates are requesting peace talks, Olivia continued. They want you specifically to lead the negotiations. Set it up, John said. But our fleet continues its advance. We negotiate from strength, not hope. 2 days later, John sat across from a group of Silurian representatives on a neutral station at the edge of their home system. These were not military leaders but civilian administrators who had seized control from several hardline commanders. The empire as it existed cannot continue, John stated firmly. All subject species must be granted independence. All military forces must stand down. The lead Silurian negotiator, an older female named Silai, inclined her head. We accept these terms, but we ask for protection from those who would seek revenge against all Silurians. Many of us oppose the hardliners, but we're powerless to stop them. The Alliance does not condone revenge, John replied. Justice, yes. Accountability, absolutely. But not the wholesale punishment of an entire species. The peace talks continued for hours, laying the groundwork for a new relationship between the Silurians and the rest of the galaxy. But the hardliners on the homeworld refused to surrender. Zarek has requested to speak with you, Olivia told John when he returned to the flagship. Alone. John raised an eyebrow. A trap. Possibly, she admitted. But our intelligence suggests he's running out of options. The planetary defense grid is falling. His own people are turning against him. The meeting was arranged in a secure chamber on a small station orbiting the Xilarian moon. John entered alone, as requested, though Alliance security teams monitored from a distance. High Executor Zarek looked diminished. His once imposing figure seemed smaller, his blue skin paler than John remembered. "You've won, Maxwell," Zarek said without preamble. "The empire I served for 2 centuries is gone." "Why did you do it?" John asked, the question that had burned within him for 5 years. "Why attack peaceful colonies? You must have known it would lead to war." Zarek's black eyes fixed on John. "Our predictive models showed that humanity would eventually surpass us. In 50 years, perhaps less, you would become the dominant species in this sector. Everything we built would be overshadowed. We decided to eliminate the threat before it matured." "Your attack guaranteed the very outcome you feared," John said. "Yes," Zarek admitted. "The prediction became self-fulfilling. Our action created the very future we sought to prevent." 5 years later, John Maxwell stood before the newly formed Galactic Federation. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from dozens of species, including reformed Xilarians who had rejected their imperial past. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals," John began. "The war that nearly destroyed us has instead united us. From the ashes of the Empire, we have built something greater, a true federation of free worlds." After the ceremony, John traveled to New Montana. The colony had been rebuilt, a shining symbol of recovery. He walked alone to the memorial garden and stopped before a simple stone marker bearing his sister's name. "We changed the stars for you, Diane," he whispered, placing a small flower on the stone. "It cost us dearly, but we built a better galaxy in your memory." As the twin suns of New Montana set, John looked up at the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, ships of a dozen species traveled freely between worlds that had once lived in fear. The peace they now enjoyed wasn't the peace of submission that the Empire had demanded, but the true peace of equals working together. It was worth fighting for.